Cosmology course. Our book is still The Devil's Pulpit by the Reverend Robert Taylor. So we're in the very last lecture, very last chapter of the book. So let's begin. Page the bottom of page 334. So the last paragraph. 1 second, y'all. So it reads, so that it is hard to say whether the science of the gospel has been more above their understanding. Remember, the Gospels, in fact, the whole collection of books, the Biblio-Heliothek, right, the Book of the Sun, the Gospels, the history of the S-U-N, Sun. The Gospels is a science book. Again, it's telling the history of the sun, the S-U-N, Sun. So it is hard to say whether the science, the astronomical science, the natural phenomena of the gospel or contained in the gospels has been more above their understanding, has been above the understanding of the priest craft. Okay, craft. For example, steel workers, craft. It's a trade. It is a trade. And trades have trade secrets. You have to be in the trade to know the secrets. And you have to be a high-level member of that trade in order to know the big secrets, the gospel craft, the priest craft, rather. Whether it has been above their understanding, that is the science, and of course we know it's not that, at least today, this was written in 1831, or its morals. So our ancient ancestors, the Egyptians, writing in the ancient Egyptian script and language, memorialized with pen and paper the history of the S-U-N, Sun, and natural phenomena. They personified the natural phenomena, for example, the S-U-N, Sun, the spring wind, the spring winds, the constellations, everything. They personified natural phenomena. Anthropomorphized means personified. And then to give the record character and texture, they added into it moral lessons. Moral lessons. Moral lessons that were in harmony, with natural law. Now, I'm not talking about Jeremiah 8:8 occurrences, lies and deception. I'm not talking about that. So it is hard to say whether the science of the gospel has been more above their understanding, above the priestcraft's understanding, or its morals, or its moral stories based in natural law, opposed to their conduct. So the morality, or what, y'all? the commerce the way autochthonous Moors, men and women, engage each other personally and in trade. Y'all see it? So what did they have a problem with, these priests, the priestcraft? Do they have a problem understanding the natural phenomena? Or are they just inherently a bad seed? Their conduct is contrary, goes against nature. Well, common sense should tell you that, right? At least as far as the hybrids are concerned, because they're hybrids, so they have a hybrid conscience. They're out of tune with nature. And we can legitimately say that. Not as a put down, but it's just a legitimate statement. They are out of tune with nature. Why? Because they are of chimpanzee, male DNA plus the Moabite woman's feminine DNA. So that's out of tune with nature. That's a hybrid. It's out of tune with nature. Everybody see that? Not a put down, but it's just what it is. So obviously their conduct would be out of tune with nature, right? So they look like men and women, but they have a consciousness that's mixed with the chimpanzee, which would explain the animalistic behavior. No empathy, no compassion, no mercy, object-oriented instead of relationship-oriented. For example, the chimpanzee will fight and kill over a coconut, over a pin. But an autochthonous man and woman wouldn't. We would walk away from the coconut or the pin rather than fight over it. And we see that demonstrated in history. So this is the author's point. So let's go to the next paragraph. Next page rather. Page 335. No sooner was believing the gross sense of the dead and deadly letter of the text of the New Testament. The dead and deadly letter. Y'all know how I see that. Dead as in what? Well, dead means the opposite of life. Here I am in full life. An autochthonous Moor, the substance and subject matter of the law. So dead, in my mind, is referencing corpse, like a corpse, like a dead body that no longer has life in it. A corpse as in corporation. No sooner was believing the gross means without detail, okay? Without detail. No sooner was believing the gross sense of the dead and deadly letter of the text of the New Testament. Now, if y'all watched the video I did yesterday, the heading in the book, the gospel, and I think it was the gospel and the stars. The author had a heading in there that Christianity is commerce. Christianity is commerce, or commercial rather, commercial. And that sin, y'all remember this? I didn't bring the book with me today. I wish I would have brought it. I would bring it back and read it back. Sin is what? Sin is a debt according to Christianity. Sin is a debt. And in U.S. statutes, their corporate system, all crimes are what? Commercial, debts. All crimes are commercial. They are debts. Do y'all see that's coming right out of Christianity? The fiat system, Federal Reserve notes, the whole fiat system, that's not money. Okay? And your mortgage, these are dead pledges. Dead pledges. What else are they? What else are they? They're instruments that are used. Give me 1 second, y'all. Hold on. So they are feudal instruments. Feudal instruments. Okay? So let's say, for example, you're desperate or you're ambitious. You want something for free, and you know that the only legitimate, safe way to get something is to put out whatever is required for it in nature. Right? For example, land, according to the book of the law, you cannot sell it. It's held in trust by the Most High. But what you can do is rent the number of harvests until the next Jubilee year. You can rent it, and then the land returns to the rightful heirs. But let's say someone who's ignorant about that, and there's a foreigner, let's say a foreign European, be he a Moor or a hybrid, knowing that you're ignorant of that, or maybe even you're desperate, right, because you didn't cultivate when it was time to cultivate. Whatever a man sow, that he shall also reap. And then he tricks you, this foreigner tricks you into giving your land away or your property. Now you've just been escheated. Why? Because you're incompetent. You're incompetent. You don't know who you is, and you know anything about your law, nationality. So you get escheated. Now multiply that, and the mechanism is Christianity in North America, and you'll see how many, if not most, of our ancestors must have got escheated out of their property through the banks and through public policy intended to make people ignorant of their nationality and their inheritance, so that the bank itself or other hybrids and their dirty Moor companions could escheat their inheritance from them. So yes, Christianity is maritime admiralty law. The Holy See is the world of the dead. Let me say it again. It is the world of the dead. It is feudalism. No sooner was believing the gross sense of the dead and deadly letter of the text of the New Testament. This is consistent with what Seiss said in the Gospel of the Star. In that heading, Christianity is commercial. This is the exact same meaning, substituted in the place of critical and philosophical understanding. What is critical and philosophical understanding? That's intelligence. That is your faculty of critical thinking, your faculty of analytical thinking. All right? So this feudal fiat system called Christianity, where a sin is a debt which is contrary to the book of the law. Deuteronomy 28, etc., etc. Sin being a financial debt is contrary to the book of the law. Okay? So this feudal system, this commercial feudal system that binds you to a religion called Christianity, that's a fairy tale, that's a fable, substituted in, or was substituted in the place of critical and philosophical understanding of its spirit and intention. So what was the original spirit of the Gospels when our ancient Egyptian ancestors wrote it? Carl writes, hello. When our ancestors wrote it, what was the spirit? Well, they told us. The spirit of it was to preserve through hidden code the history of the S-U-N sun and the Maserat. That's all it was about. To encode it, hide it from the Catholics so that they couldn't find it and destroy it, and we wouldn't have a knowledge of astronomy at all. And then they infused it, gave it character and texture with breath and death by adding moral stories to it that were consistent with nature. That were consistent with nature. So y'all, this is natural law. The essence of which is don't harm anyone. See, that's all you need to know. Don't harm anyone, including yourself. That's all you need to know in commerce, in your relationships with other people. And they gave you examples of that. All right? Let's continue. Then a fierce and furious zeal for the gospel, a fierce and furious zeal for the gospel was allowed to supersede all necessity of obedience to its moral inference. What is this saying? This is saying that the clergy, the priestcraft, went to war to institute a world dominated by feudalism and ignorance and fear. And they did it militarily initially. So all those references that you see in the New Testament that talks about military equipment, put on the full suit of armor, that was literal when it was initially written. It was literal. And then they changed the doctrine after they had gained possession of all your land, all your stuff. Okay, now we don't need to fight anymore. Let's make it metaphorical. And that's how they roll. Y'all see what happened here? So they replaced nature and natural law with a feudal system. And they did it militarily, and then through fear, promotion and maintenance of ignorance, through torture and terrorism, and institutions. And this is how they escheated us. And this is how they continue to escheat us. Right? This is how they continue to do it. So I hope everyone can see what this it doesn't matter what religion it is. I'm talking Christianity because that's the religious tradition that I came out of. And I can speak on that. The moral detail of quote unquote the acceptable year of the Lord. Now y'all know the acceptable year of the Lord is August. and September, the harvest. That's the climactic part of the year. Everything that happens in the year is for the climax, for the orgasm, for Mama Earth to give you a geometrical abundance, a superabundance of grains, fruits and vegetables, and all other vegetations. The harvest time is August and September, the acceptable year of the Lord. The allegorized history of the sun sun exhibited to the perceptions of the wise and wrongs and sorrows, which the principle of reason, y'all got that? The principle of reason, critical thinking and analytical thinking, which the principle of reason would have to undergo ere it would come to triumph, as ultimately it will over what, y'all? Over barbarous ignorance and sanctified malignity. So in other words, ignorant people can become very violent, very extremely violent, like that. Why? Because they're given to their emotions, just like gasoline. You throw some fire on gasoline, poof, right? It's not going to be a slow process. Same thing with ignorant people. If you ignite, if you excite them, if you incite violence, if you incite them to violence by what? Throwing a flame on their emotions. Y'all see? So the barbarous ignorance and sanctified malignity. This is the priestcraft. The malignant priestcraft, presenting and pretending to be holy, honorable, but they just pretending, as we all know. Y'all know that there's a certain group of religious leaders who pretend they have a tradition of circumcision orally, a man putting a infant's penis in his mouth to perform what they say is a more effective circumcision. Y'all see the point? Now, in what world is that okay? In what world would anyone in their right mind even conceive of doing that? Now, let's suppose it's true. Let's suppose it's true. Doesn't your own internal moral code, doesn't the God in you tell you not to put your mouth on an infant's genitals, especially a man, to put a masculine or male infant, baby, toddler, adolescent, adult, penis in your mouth? Doesn't the God in you tell you don't do that? That's wrong, that's dirty, that's nasty. Need I say more? And it's malignant. Why? For example, like a malignant cancer will spread and will kill you. Will spread and will kill you. So let's say the priest has herpes. Now he gives that male or masculine infant herpes. Well, herpes can be fatal to infants, to newborns, infants, toddlers, okay, even adolescents, to children. Yes, it can. But the people are so brainwashed with religion that the God in them has been silenced. They're not saying that's wrong. Under any circumstances, the God in me tells me that's wrong. And if my son was an adult, he wouldn't want that done to him. Or it puts my son's life at risk and danger. Well, it's clearly a mode of infection. But the belief turned your mind off, made you stupid, dumb, and idiot. Because after that, now your child has an infection that might kill him. Or worse, your child already expired because of that. And you can't turn back time. But there are more other examples of that. All right? Now let's continue. The point here, y'all, the principle of reason, the logos, science, or truth. Did y'all catch that? The principle of reason, the logos, science, or truth itself personified is the Jesus of the fable. Wait. Y'all say that one more again. Say that one more again. If you got eyes to see and ears to hear, listen to what the Spirit is saying to the congregation. The principle of reason. Who has reason? Who has reason? Men and women. Babies' faculty of reason hasn't matured. They have it, but it hasn't matured. It might not mature until they're 25, 26 years old. The principle of reason is the Jesus of the New Testament, is the Jesus of the fable, is the Jesus of the fairy tale. The principle of reason is Jesus. The logos is the principle of reason. Therefore, the logos is Jesus of the New Testament. Science is the principle of reason. Therefore, science is Jesus of the New Testament. Let the Spirit hear. Let the congregation hear what the Spirit is speaking. The truth is Jesus of the New Testament. You are Jesus of the New Testament. You are Jesus of the New Testament. The S-U-N Son. You are the S-O-N Son. You are Jesus of the New Testament when you exercise your faculty of reason, your faculty of critical and analytical thinking. You are the logos. You are science, just like the Prophet Noble Drew Ali said. Study yourself. And when you finish studying yourself, study yourself some more. Study nature. You are nature. You are thought made manifest from the land. Thought, the Hermetic laws, the first of which is the law of mentalism. You are thought made manifest in this physical body, this physical avatar. The Father, the great I am, the great I be, the great I exist, that who does both evil and good. In other words, that who executes judgment. Okay? Righteous judgment. Judgment consistent with nature, with natural law. The masculine mental energy. Nationality. Your law. Feminine mental energy. Best likened to the subconscious mind, the me, always changing, always becoming. And then the soul, in Latin, S-O-L, in English, S-U-N. That great source of heat and warmth that facilitates metabolism, animation, and all other electrochemical and metabolic activities in your body. This is the great Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. The principle of reason, the logos, the science, the truth. The truth. I just told y'all the truth. Well, not me, the author just told you the truth. The truth itself personified, the anthropomorphized truth, the principle of reason, the logos, science, personified, is Jesus of the gospel fable. Now I'm telling y'all, the author is telling you rather, what our ancient ancestors penned in what is called the Gospels, the history of the S-U-N Son. It's not from me, it's from our ancient ancestors. But that's only part of the story. Let's continue. The next part of the story, the representatives of barbarous ignorance, talked about that a little bit earlier, are the Jewish rabblemen. Yes, these religious leaders who incited the crowd to demand death, to demand that Jesus be put to death. Who incited it? The Jewish rabbis, the clergy, right? Did they do it themselves, or did they have a cat's paw? They had a cat's paw. They wanted, this is a manipulation technique, they pulled the Roman government into it. They wanted Pontius Pilate and the Roman soldiers to do it. Right? Use them as a cat's paw. That's how the story goes, right? So they would then, the clergy would then hide and say, we didn't kill him. The Romans killed him. Be mad at the Romans, don't be mad at us. Cowards. Tricksters. The representative of barbarous ignorance are the Jewish rabblemen. Let's talk about the crowd now. The crowd was ignorant. Because if they had knowledge of nature, natural law, don't harm anyone, they wouldn't have been out there acting a fool and stupid, and they wouldn't have been influenced by the Jewish rabbis who set the whole thing up, the puppet masters. Okay? Y'all see it? If they were educated on the law, they wouldn't have even listened to those clergy. They may have even took action against the clergy for what they were doing, but that's not what they did. Okay? They just fell into the trap. It's no different than someone pouring lighter fluid on the charcoal for a barbecue. That's what they did to the crowd. Let's continue. The religious church and the gospel-going villains, that's the congregation, right? They're not thinking. All you need to do is incite them with words, spoken or written, egged on by their priests and preachers and Methodist parsons, that's Methodist clergy, to cry out against him, to cry out against Christ, to cry out against the principle of reason, to cry out against the logos, to cry out against science, to cry out against truth. They know not wherefore, and to hate him. They don't know why they hate reason. They don't know why they hate the logos. They don't know why they hate science. They don't know why they hate the truth. The paragraph goes on. For they know not what. So what is this saying to us? They're just doing what the clergy told them to do. They don't know why. They never even asked the question. And let me state that differently. They never activated their critical thinking mind to ask the question or questions to see whether or not the clergy were telling them the truth, to see whether or not they should give full faith and credit to the clergy, to the priestcraft, to the rabbis. Right? They never did that. Now let's go to the next paragraph and we can see the culmination of this. The chief priests and elders and all the council. Now the council's meeting in secret, y'all. They're not meeting publicly, meeting in secret, seeking for a false witness against him. The chief priests, the elders, and all the council, the bankers. Well, in these days, we wouldn't say bankers, the financial institution leaders. So the clergy, the priestcraft, the heads of the corporate government, the heads of the corporations, the heads of the nonprofits, seeking for a false witness against the principle of reason, seeking for a false witness against the logo, seeking for a false witness against science, and seeking for a false witness against truth. Let me include the heads of the colleges and universities and the school systems, K through 12, including Head Start programs. I don't know if they still call them Head Start programs, but y'all know I'm talking about preschool, daycare. Okay? All of them come together. Okay? And figure out ways how to destroy your ability to think critically, to ask critical thinking questions. They come together and think of ways and means using psychological techniques that they pay researchers, psychologists, to come up with and use against you. They come up with false sciences like evolution and many more. Fake, let me not say it. Let me say this, y'all. How can I best put this? Creating illnesses. Creating illnesses. Y'all heard? Broad. No, let me stop here. Last time I did this, let me take all of that back. Last time I did that, they removed my video and threatened to give me a strike if I did it again. So but I think y'all get the message. Okay? So unfortunately, I'm censored on YouTube, and y'all don't support. But you know what's funny? See, those people who are concerned with whether or not you're waking up, from the spell, whether or not the curse is being broken, they can tell that you're still cursed, still under the spell, because you don't support people who are giving you the real stuff. Y'all don't support. And that's why they continue to put the screws to you. Put the screws, because they know they can. You're not going to do anything. You're still in Oz. You're still in the land of Oz. But you'll go to a channel where they talk about current events and rappers, where they talk about gossip and rumor and other people's business, and y'all give $100 Cash App, $50 Cash App, right? 1 million comments, 1 million questions and opinions. See how our state of mind, you see, anybody who's interested in knowing, all they got to do is go to social media. They can tell exactly where we are as a people, still under the spell or waking up. And y'all know what's true. Y'all know it's true. Our people are still, and I'm talking to you, most likely you too. If you go to a religious channel, you see all kind of comments. They're sending in donations. They're selling the same they're selling the same hustle and products that they've been doing for hundreds of years. Prayers, right? They're selling all of this religious paraphernalia, and our people still eating it up, probably you too. But then you get people like me and others who are teaching you nature and natural law, what the Most High's commandments, what the Most High's instructions truly are, and we can demonstrate it by fact, not doctrine, using science. Y'all ain't trying to hear it. And I'm talking to y'all listening to this right now, because I know the type of engagement that I'm getting from the audience. Darrell-El writes, state is condition of body, and estate is a collection of assets of a deceased body. Both have connection to geographical locations as well. Yeah, passed down by nationality, by bloodline. David Alonso's right, hablo español. Only English, David. Estate is also state of mind. Estate is also state of mind. So is your state of mind religious? Which is the corporate dead state, which is a feudalism state of mind, which is a state of mind of darkness, ignorance, Okay, which is a state of mind of willful giving up of your birthright. You can condense birthright or consolidate, collapse it, willfully giving up your rights. Accepting being cattle, the herd, which in Genesis chapter 1, the Elohim, I don't think I've ever talked about this. If y'all watched my video on Genesis chapter 1 and 2, I think I talked about it in that video. But the Elohim, who genetically engineered the created creature, well, the genetically engineered creature in Genesis chapter 1, gave them jurisdiction over everything moving upon the earth, and that includes you. That includes you. That includes you. Okay? Y'all go back and read it. Go back and read it. Not only jurisdiction, but domination, superiority. You go back and read it. When you go into the etymology of the words, you'll see domination, superiority. Where y'all think they get the term or the phrase or the expression white supremacy? White, the landlord, the ruler of the land, supremacy, having subjection every thing or every living thing moving upon the earth. That includes you. Y'all see that? I hope you can put two and two together. Put two and two together. Now, in the book of John, John's gospel. Is it John 1, y'all? John 1, 1 through 4? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The authority for that is Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1. Put two and two together. So this historical Jesus gets his authority from Genesis chapter 1, which is about the Elohim, who were either all Moors or a team of Moors and Raphaim, who came together and put together a genetic engineering project and produced a half chimpanzee, half man being, and gave it jurisdiction, gave it primacy over you, the rightful heir of all land, all water, all resources, terrestrial and celestial, all commerce and all contracts. It's all yours by birthright. These dirty dogs gave it to that genetically engineered creature. According to Scripture. According to the New Testament. But here's the problem. You better beware of that book of John. You better be you better beware. The alarms better be going off about the authenticity of the book of John. You better know the problems associated with it. You better be familiar with Jeremiah 8:8. And you also should know that Genesis chapter 1 is an insert. It's not part of the original book of Genesis. Okay, according to the story, It was inserted into the book of Genesis either toward the end or shortly after Babylonian captivity. And it is not a creation story. If y'all, I intentionally don't tell y'all what it is because I want you to go watch the video that I did on Genesis chapter 1 and 2. I think it's called A Critical Analysis of Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2. So you can see for yourself, so you can receive an education and not repeat something you heard me say. But you can see the evidence, the facts for yourself. Okay, so this whole religious thing is a hustle, a scam to rob you of your birthright and to have jurisdiction over you and keep you in a permanent state of servitude, which is what we would expect, right? Deuteronomy 28, verse 15 through 68. Until you return to the Most High, which simply means until you learn who you is and who you ain't. What does that mean? Until you start living in harmony with nature. The essence of the Most High's commandments, personally, is don't harm yourself. When it comes to other people, we call that commerce. You have a right to contract. Don't harm anybody else. Don't steal, right? Don't cross over the border. That ain't your land. Don't try to take it. Those are not your heirs. Don't steal them. So on and so forth, so on and so forth. And justice. And justice, okay? And justice. And I'm referencing the reserve powers of the people. The reserve powers of the people, self-governance, the right to contract, the executive office also, the legislative and the judicial process. When you have to exercise divine justice, then you exercise divine justice. Look around you in nature, it happens all the time. Okay, and like the Vietnamese person told me, sometimes you're doing somebody a favor. You know, getting them out of here so they can start again. All right, y'all. I kind of got off on a different track, but let's go back to it. All right. So the chief priests and the elders and all the council seeking for false witness against him, against the truth, replace natural law with a bunch of theories, replace natural law, common law, with statutes and codes, replace natural law with fake science, and very easily finding it. See these witnesses who will lie against you. Be sure on it, are the Society for the Suppression of Vice. How about that for hypocrisy? How about the NAACP? There's two I'm thinking of, I'm not going to say. There's two that I'm thinking of that might hit close to home to a lot of people, but I won't say. But let me just say this. They create institutions and give them a lofty, honorable name. And then behind the scenes, they do a lot of dirt, cause a lot of tragedy, do a lot of manipulation, a lot of deception. In 1831, in Britain, in London, it was a Society for the Suppression of Vice. a Christian organization. See, it's all religion. With the clergy and dignitaries of the church at their head, not acting openly and above board or above ground, but in council, in secrecy, and secret cabal, employing their wealth, using money to buy people. See, y'all know you can use money to buy a false witness, like what they did in Bill Cosby's case, right? You saw it on the news. They paid women to go in and give a false witness, false testimony against Bill Cosby. Guess what? They also pay scientists to create research to say something that they want to be said, that they want the public or their customers or potential customers to believe. They pay them. They pay scientists. So it's not pure. It's not honorable at all. Employing their wealth to defray the expenses of the prosecution, and urging on the blackguard people of God to cry, "Crucify him." Y'all hear that? In other words, they're using money and power to incite a riot that will culminate in the masses demanding the government to kill the principle of reason, to slaughter the logos, to kill true science, and to put out the fire of truth. Crucify him. Crucify Jesus. But Jesus is the principle of reason. Jesus is the logo. Jesus is science. Jesus is the truth, according to the gospel allegory. And this is all the dirty work of the priestcraft. Crucify him. Crucify him. And to the reasonable question, why? What evil has he done? Why? What evil has Jesus done? I don't see any fault in the truth. I don't see any fault in the principle of reason. I don't see any fault in the science or the logos. Why crucify him? What bad has he done? And to the reasonable question, quote unquote, why? What evil hath he done? To cry out so much more, let him be crucified. Y'all see that? They ain't answered the question. They didn't answer the question. They just insisted. They just kept pouring the gasoline on the crowd. Kept pouring the gasoline on the crowd, who they made ignorant. Who they made ignorant for that day, for that moment, when they would need to pour the gasoline to ignite a blast, to exterminate someone indirectly. In this case, it was the Romans. With the author, the Reverend Robert Taylor, it's who? The jury. The jury who was going to meet to determine his fate, because they charged him a second time with blasphemy, the penalty of which is life in prison. Crucify him. Y'all see that? Anybody who's in a religion, if you're a man, you're being punked. If you're a woman, you're being used, pimped. So that when the deed shall have been done, so that when Christ shall have been crucified, so that when the Reverend Robert Taylor would have been sentenced to life in prison, each particular reverend and right reverend, can you imagine that? Reverend and right reverend may still be able to lay claim to the praise of setting his face against all sorts of persecution. See this hypocrisy, y'all? That's why they use the cat's paw. That's why the Jewish clergy went, got Pilate involved. Pilate ain't had nothing to do with it. Went and excited that whole situation with Pilate, got the Roman soldiers involved. Why? Because they're cowards. They throw rocks and hide behind trees like second graders. That's their MO. To this day, throw rocks and hide behind the other tree, the puppet master. Right? But that's not intelligence, that's not brilliance, that's cowardice, and that's animalistic nature. Not to be confused with intelligence. So that when the deed shall have been done, each particular reverend and right reverend, these are guilty men. They are guilty. They are hypocrites, also guilty. In the case of the Gospels, guilty of murder, because they incited the people. They triggered it. So that these guilty men may still be able to lay claim to the praise of setting his face against all sorts of persecution, and to say, like the Scottish murderer to the ghost of Banco, setting his face against all persecution. That means you can't come at me and say I'm responsible for killing him. No, can't do that. My hands, look, I was there, you saw me. I ain't do nothing. That's what the author is saying. But I saw you throw that rock and hide behind the tree, right? You threw that rock, hit somebody in the head, and he thought it was somebody else, right? The fight is on. You instigated that fight. Okay? You're responsible. You threw the rock. Okay? He continues, and to say, like the Scottish murderer of the ghost, Banco, quote unquote, thou canst say, I did it. Thou can't say, I did it. Right? Y'all saw the Roman soldier. You saw Pilate. Everybody saw what he did. So this is how they roll. But of course we know, according to the grammar of the text, JC didn't lose his life. He was not killed. Okay? He was dressed. Hold on. According to the text, according to the grammar, y'all can read about this in the Devil's Pulpit. According to the text, he made his escape with the help of Pilate. And it was the Moor. It was the Moor who they made bear Jesus' cross. And clearly, y'all, that would have been an insertion, right? Clearly that would have been an insertion. But that's a message to the hybrids and the dirty Moors. That when someone on the inside of the house is in trouble, blame the more and convict the more. That's the message in that. Simon the Cyrenian. And then cover it. Okay? And then cover it. It is obvious then to all impartial critics that the Gospels, though their details are various, the 4 books, they give different accounts, right? Contradictions. Some say more about one thing, others say something else. Not talking about the doctrine as to why, just what's in the text. Though their details are various and their particular incidences wholly irreconcilable with each other, this is the contradictions, are not in the least degree false or contradictory. So we need to know why. Why is the author saying that? Here's his answer. Because the detail and the incidents are no essentialities of the Gospels. Now I would have to agree. The essentials are what? The astrotheology. And the morality or the moral stories that are based in natural law. Anything other than that was edited into the Gospels. Okay? This is what the author is saying. Any questions? Does anyone have any questions before we continue? Any comments before we continue? The moral is wholly unaffected. However, the circumstances of the allegory may be varied. So there we see it, right, y'all? The morality and the science. The only line of truth, listen, the only line of truth to be observed, and which is not and may not be compromised. So here's what's not compromised, is that in whatever way, and by whatever means, it is always ignorance and prejudice. Here's the truth that's consistent through the Gospels. I'm paraphrasing the author. The only line of truth that we observe that's consistent through the Gospels is that it is always ignorance and prejudice that seek destruction of learning and virtue. So who's responsible for ignorance and prejudice? Well, it's the clergy. It's the clergy. Who do you think came up with black, white, and yellow? Who do you think came up with classifications for men and women and beings that are colors? What's the purpose of it? Keep you ignorant and to promote prejudice. And what a lot of people call right now racism. Right? This is what he's talking about. And the destruction of learning and virtue. Well, if this ain't more clear in today's world, I don't know what is. The destruction of learning and virtue. Look at the way people live. When you turn on social media, it's just women putting themselves out on the market like whores, showing their body. You know, for I don't know, for what you pay for it if you want to see more. But y'all know what I'm talking about. And even in the classroom, other students are so disruptive and so disrespectful It's unbelievable. But they promote that, right? They promote it. And they have these flimsy moral reasons. Basically, if you punish a child, if you discipline a child, you get punished for it. Jail time. Lose your job. Or what? Children Family Services come kidnap your heirs because you're disciplining them. See, this is all part of their plan to put your heirs in prison. This is feudalism, where they can make money off of them, where they can make Federal Reserve notes off of them. Okay? You're just cattle. Just cattle. Just cattle. It is always the self-interested, so you know that's the priest craft. It is always the self-interested and crafty, that's the priest craft, who excite that prejudice. So they create the prejudice, they create the ignorance, and then they pour fire on it whenever they want to get you to do their dirty work, to genocide yourself, and endeavor to perpetuate that ignorance through the school systems and not even through the universities, through TV. I try to watch some social media channels. I couldn't watch it. It's just, I don't know how to say it without. I mean, it's for me. It's belittling me if I sit there and watch that. Like, what the hell is wrong with me if I sit there and watch that? Right? But these are popular social media channels. Right? But all of that is to do what? To corrupt you, to make you undisciplined, to make you in tune with your emotions instead of reason. Right? Because once they get you there, they got you. From which the moral of the story is to do good. Let me repeat that. From which the moral is to the good and the wise that they should learn to meet with fortitude, to bear with patience, and to forgive with boundless philanthropy the persecutions and the wrongs, from which perfection itself could not be exempted. So that's the moral of the story for the good and the wise. The admonition to the less learned and less wise oh, that they would take it in part. Okay, take this advice. Oh, that you would take this advice, at least in part. Just take part of this advice. How little they should trust themselves to be ruled by priests, and how the man whom their priests have delivered over to their justice. Now y'all remember we're talking about feudalism. And how the man whom their priests have delivered over to their prejudice might, if they had been done, let me repeat that, if they had but done themselves the justice to inquire into his character, prove to be their best and greatest benefactor. Y'all hear that? So all y'all people who are stuck on religion, the author calls you less learned and less wise. I don't care if you got a PhD, two, 3 PhDs. The author is telling you that you're blindly giving your priest, your rabbi, your more, your morshe, your pastor, your reverend, your general, your captain, whatever these religious people's titles are, by you giving them full faith and credit, they're in a position that when someone stands up, let's say like a Malcolm X, everybody knows Malcolm X, like a Malcolm X, they can very easily say, crucify him, crucify him. You know, they're pouring the gasoline on this ignorant crowd. And y'all gonna shout back, crucify him. Y'all gonna believe it and support the clergy. And y'all know it's true. What's the first thing they accuse in history? Our leaders that stood up. What's the first thing they accuse them of? Pedophilia, rape, drug use, right? Right? And y'all believe it. Why? Because you're brainwashed. You're not in your right mind. Farrakhan even told you that. I saw Farrakhan in one of his videos tell the crowd that they're confused, mixed up, shaken up, all kind of truths that were rather insulting because they thought he was joking, but the man was telling the truth. He was mocking them to their face. But they didn't realize it. But this man who you participated in murdering his reputation and getting him locked up, defamed, disgraced, as the author said, had you did your due diligence, had you researched his character, had you asked analytical thinking questions, had you did some analytical thinking, had you asked questions to determine whether the priestcraft was telling the truth or not, whether the priests, whether their character was good enough for you to believe anything that they say. Because if you did research, you might have found out that 9 out of 10 or all 10 of those priests are publicly known to be pedophiles themselves, are publicly known to have robbed people. But because you didn't, you participated in bringing down a man or a woman who could have been the greatest and the best thing for you and your people in 10 lifetimes. But in the main design of sacred writ, y'all see that? Sacred writ? Okay, don't people write writs when they correspond with a court, right? Or an alleged court. The sacred writ, the scope and interpretation is entirely a matter of science. And I agree 100%. And the moral only contingent, as a moral might attach to the game of chess or to a problem in Euclid, in which the moral ideas of precision and accuracy, of method and conduct, of order, of justice, of truth, cannot be separated from our observance of the beauty we perceive and the pleasure we derive in the accuracy of scientific demonstration. So let me say this. Morality is different in different countries and cultures. It's different in different countries and cultures. Right? It's different. They see the world totally different, especially in Asia. Oh, I mean, their reality, their morality is very different than in the West. So here they have Buddhism, Hinduism, a whole bunch of philosophies. Buddhism is not supposed to be a religion, but it's practiced like a religion by many people, from what I'm told. Then there's also, like I said, Hinduism. Okay? But you should also know that a lot of what's in the Bible was lifted out of those books and out of Zoroastrianism, etc., etc., etc. Right? But it is what it is. So the author is telling you, start using your mind. Break the curse. Y'all remember the statement that the author made? Let me check the time. Listen to this statement. Listen to this on page 326. And if it be urged that light, that is intelligence, that is wisdom, if it be urged that light, that intelligence, that is wisdom, if it be urged that light is only of use to those who have eyes to see with, correlate that to JC's explanation to his apostles as to why he speaks to the people only in parables. What did he say? He said, I speak to the people only in parables, so that having eyes to see, they cannot perceive. And if it be urged that light is only useful to those who have eyes to see with, knowledge, wisdom, light is of no use to you if your eyes see, but they don't perceive. This is what JC cursed you with out of his own mouth. Don't get mad because you hear me saying it. Get smart. Break the spell. Take control of your mind and your body. Get those demons off of you. Only you can do it. So let's go back page 336. This is really the moral of the gospel. Y'all hear? Don't let somebody fool you, play you. Don't let somebody use you as a cat's paw. Don't let somebody incite you to violence against the real preachers of the gospel. This is really the moral of the gospel. But in the main design of sacred writ, the scope and interpretation is entirely a matter of science. and the moral only contingent as a moral might attach to the game of chess or to a problem in Euclid, a mathematical problem in which the moral ideas of precision and accuracy, of method and conduct, of order, of justice, of truth, cannot be separated from our observance of the beauty we perceive and the pleasure we derive in the accuracy of scientific demonstration. You know, this kind of reminds me of procedural, the procedures in law. The text, quote unquote, I know that my Redeemer liveth, etc., is of this entirely scientific character. The moral corollary, so moral corollary is something that logically follows another. You don't have to think about it. It's just logical, right? No part of a proposition itself, so it's not part of the proposition, it just follows logically. For example, the sun went down and it's dark. Is nothing more than an inference as to the pleasures of hope in any object and the utilities which the principle of hope may subserve in the strengthening a man's courage to contend with the difficulties of his immediate situation. Okay, I know that my Redeemer exists. Okay, it gives you hope. Okay, I agree with that. The words of the text derive a particular solemnity from the circumstances of their being read in the office for the burial of the dead, and a particular familiarity to the minds of musical amateurs from their forming the most magnificent anthem in the oratorio of the Messiah. The sound being the only part of the business which Christians have ever attended to, so they don't care about the substance, the meaning of it. They only care about the sound. Actually, I've heard Hebrew Israelites tell me that they still listen to gospel music, Christian gospel music, because they like the music and the rhythm. So I'm gonna have to go, y'all. There's construction going on right now. So Islam to all the Moors. Thank you guys for your support, spending your time with me. Y'all hear that construction, so I'm going to end it now. And much gratitude and appreciation for those of you who have supported my project to write the Book of the Law in modern English and Ancient Ibaryath, to restore the astronomy, the astrology, the Hermetic laws, constitutional principles, etc., etc. If y'all want to see the kind of content that will be in the book, take a look at the books that I have links to, that I have written in the description area of my video. All right. Also, much thanks and gratitude for those of you who have sent in donations, who have bought my books, who have subscribed to the 101 Ancient Ibaryath course. And remember, everybody's invited to come to my class on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 506 the Curses course. Islam to all the Moors and Shalom.